Welcome to Wild and Weird Radio, a Wild and Weird West Virginia podcast.
Since the beginning of the modern age of the UFO phenomena, witnesses from around the globe have come forward with amazing tales about alien abductions. Witnesses describe being taken from their homes or vehicles and having various medical procedures performed on them. And others, still more disturbing, report an ominous aspect of these encounters involving literal harvesting of human DNA to produce what they believe may be human-alien hybrids. However, some claim this may not be something new at all, and that it has possibly been going on for a very long time. Is there any proof? Have aliens manipulated humanity's DNA? If so, why is it happening? Join us tonight as we try to answer some of the questions surrounding the hybrid agenda on this episode of Wild and Weird Radio.
Welcome to Wild and Weird Radio, a Wild and Weird West Virginia podcast. Tonight, we are going to clap them alien cheeks, baby, as we dive into the topic of human-alien hybrids. This one is going to get really wild and a whole lot of weird, so hang in there, guys. There's a whole lot to cover. So how's everybody doing?
No, doing good. We're just watching the snowfall.
Yep.
Yeah. How are you guys hanging out down there in the Carolinas? What you looking at there?
It's basically the apocalypse down here because we don't get this much snow at once. This is probably the most snow we've had. It's not as bad as it was. The 93 blizzard was worse than this, but it's pretty bad with how people are reacting to it. So like every grocery store shelf is completely empty. I like to do some chaos tourism sometimes. So last night around, Joe was working kind of late and I was bored. I was sitting here and it didn't start snowing till probably about 1 a.m. So it was like 8 or 9 o'clock and I was like, I just got in my car and I went over to the Ingalls up the road just to check it out and just to see like what was going on. There were people in there like melting down, crying, threatening people. I mean, it was
Oh my gosh.
Fun. Yeah. So I every time there was like some kind of event like this and I'm like bored, I'm like, let's do a little chaos tourism. So that's what I did last night.
Luckily, we don't have a whole lot of that going on here. Now we do got, I think right now I'm looking at about 2 inches of snow.
Yeah. I've got about a foot outside of my house.
We did see them level out some shelves and whatnot at some of the local stores, which was just insane. There's really no reason for it.
But there wasn't any crying out or gnashing of teeth.
That we know of.
There was writhing. It's just, and I'm walking around. I've got a little cart because I was like, well, if I see something that I want, but I'm just walking around just like, oh, this is amazing. This is wonderful.
She's just absorbing the energy.
Yeah. It was fun. I'm like, God, I can't wait to see these 5-course meals everybody's cooking today, apparently.
Right.
Right.
Because everything was like, all the salad stuff was gone. I was like, okay, so everybody's in their 5-course meals today.
That was
still
weird.
Too close to New Year's. Everybody's in their health food kick.
Okay.
So, after February 1st hits, if we have another snowstorm, the salads are safe.
Yeah, the cinnamon rolls were all gone too. So I guess life is about balance.
We had a salad disruption here as well in our local store. I thought it was very odd to see. So that's a phenomenon apparently.
So I had to go to the store to pick up some food for our little monster because we were running out of stuff for him. And luckily, I was able to get everything he normally eats. But I did see all of the salad chaos where people would go and just.
This was the first for me. I think this is a new phenomenon. I'm not kidding, guys. I mean,
it's the resolution, man. It's
just
a resolution.
I made a big pot of bison chili and
I saw that. It looked
cornbread.
good.
but I wanted to make Joe's slaw from the Cooking with Cryptids cookbook, and I was like, oh, I guess I'll go get a head of cabbage, and I was like, I really want that slaw, like I'm craving it, and I was like, that'll be perfect with the chili, something kind of tangy and cold, and I was like, all right, not a stitch of cabbage, not a stitch of cabbage. So,
Oh man,
yep.
Wow.
Yeah.
So no Indrid coleslaw for you.
No Indrid coleslaw for me.
Oh,
that's a
man.
bummer.
Just regular cold.
Just cold.
Yeah.
So what do we got on the news desk this week, folks?
So let's go over to the news desk and let's start it off, like you said, at Monday, right?
Yeah.
It started off kind of bad, didn't it? There was a
It
local.
did.
There was a
For
local issue.
for West Virginia locals and anybody who's a fan of the Flatwoods Monster, it was kind of a tragedy.
It really was. Someone ran through the sign at the spot, and if you don't know what the spot is, there's actually a video. We'll link to it where me and Joe actually went up there, and it's just the best hamburgers around locally.
Yeah,
I
it's
think.
one of the best greasy handmade burgers you're gonna get.
It is. It's really it's nostalgia, isn't it? I mean, it's like you would imagine a hamburger bar of like the 50s or something. But anyway, someone plowed through their sign, and it's pretty crazy stuff. So apparently they're going to be building a new sign or whatnot. We'll link over to that, and you guys can go over and take a look at that story. What else we got, guys? There's some other stuff over there.
Well, we had an article break out on Tuesday or Wednesday. An Air Force gentleman came forward and was testifying about witnessing orbs flying over a nuclear facility. Now, this goes back into the whole matter of national security. What is the interest? Why would the purpose be of these orbs? Because these orbs, if you've noticed as well, if any of you guys follow the page, there have been a whole lot of reports just in the last 2 years of these small orange to blue orbs.
That's right.
So we're not only seeing an uptick of that, but this is also, I guess, the first modern day testimony of anything happening at a nuclear facility, because all the previous nuclear facility talk was older, back from the Cold War era and back in the mid-90s.
Yeah, there definitely seems to be something going on with orbs. There's some other stuff that came out this week that we'll talk about with orbs. There were some UFOs filmed over New York as well. There were some UFOs filmed over Naples Beach, which
the Naples Beach one is really interesting.
Yes, that is very interesting, and we actually have someone who can talk a little bit more about that, and we'll cut to that and let you guys hear that in their own words. This is Josh Sculthorpe, right? That's pronounced that right? Good. At least I didn't murder your name. Josh shot some very, very interesting footage that is actually in the same area that a recent sighting was reported that we have talked about just a few minutes ago, actually. And when I saw this posted on Facebook, I said, wow, this is interesting. And I just reached out, and Josh was good enough to actually come on the show and give his 2 cents on what this is. So take it away, my friend. Tell us what we're seeing here.
Absolutely. So the date is November 28th, 2021. Down here in Florida, the days go by really quick. You're working all the time. I finally secure a window of time where I could take my mom out and we can have a peaceful evening on the beach. It's a very private beach. It's in an area where it's only like CEOs and pretty much those kind of people live in. And once you see this video, you'll be able to tell that we're the only 2 people on this beach. And the segment of the beach that we're on is it's about a mile and a half worth of walking. And I've always not wanted to come out publicly with the location of this beach, but honestly, there's so much information that is under fire, which, the truth and facts that people have a hard time, it gets buried by so much that's going on in today's times. And so I have no problem, releasing the information of the exact spot where I had my sighting, my encounter. it is, while it is a really nice beach, it is used by local law enforcement and other law enforcement entities for tactical training, for all kinds of different multi-purpose uses. And so it's literally just my mom and I, maybe some tourists. In the video, you don't see any. We didn't see any. At around, I want to say it's 5:40, we start seeing these, what can only be described as orange balls. And there are four of them. One of them goes immediately all the way out in Bonita, Florida. The exact spot is Bonita Beach, Florida. So I actually see one go separate from the original four and just shoot over that way, and it's gone for the entire duration. One out of the four lights goes over Bonita, and there's three other lights. And in the actual video my mom captures, you can see that it is a super windy day, and not only are these lights able to stay in place, but for the 15-minute walk that we have, which isn't part of the video, but you'd be able to use Google Maps to go from Delnor Wiggins Pass, which is where we go to see some of the most breathtaking sunsets that Florida has to offer, to the parking spot that is nearest to that. You'd be able to see that that's accurately a mile and a half or a mile 0.25, something like that. We saw those lights for that entire duration of that walk. They moved at incredible speeds. Unfortunately, I didn't get on video. My mom didn't get on video. One of them actually came within, 100 to 200 yards right in front of us. And I would have loved to take a video of that, because I could have been able to zoom in on that. You'd actually be able to see, something that does not look like a Chinese lantern, which is heavily debated, which will be heavily debated. I welcome it. It's totally fine. All I can say is that it looked like just a really bright orange ball with a luminescence of orange around it. At the end of our walk, we get to where the law enforcement is waiting over at the parking place, and so we tell them, hey, look at these lights, and they proceed to tell us that these are cargo airplanes. And I'm like, there's no way. There's four of them in close proximity going in between all this space right in front of us within 100 yards. So the local law enforcement proceeds to say, look, we can help out. So they're in the app store is called, there's these, the specific app is called Star, it's like stargazing. It's a stargazing app, and it also picks up the satellites that are out there. And he's able to, the app, but he scrolls to try to find a satellite where the camera's facing these lights, and goes ahead and proceeds to tell us that, look, it's a satellite. And all jokes aside, this was a convincing argument that he's trying to portray to my mother and I. I would have loved to get that all on video, and I'll make it a point now to definitely get this stuff on video. I'm not trying to say I'm a UFO hotspot. I've definitely seen these things almost closer than, or as close as to what I saw on that sighting. And I got a GoPro Hero 10 and all the necessary equipment. I plan on investing in another 3 GoPros, because God knows what's going to happen. Backup batteries, only because not only do I love these sunsets, I love these strange phenomena and things that happen. And maybe there's someone out there that can provide more insight as to, maybe it's just a weather balloon, but maybe it's not.
The Naples thing was very interesting, because I looked at this video and it's like, well, first, you're thinking, well, that's just flares. You're thinking, well, we've seen this before,
Yeah.
And
But
no,
then it does. Then it takes a different turn.
It does, doesn't it?
It doesn't do flares.
It doesn't do flares. It doesn't do flares
No.
well. So if that's a UFO trying to emulate a flare, it's doing a very bad job.
Right.
What else we got?
I feel like everything is always just a flirt. It's flares. It's all right, everybody. It's flares. They're gonna have to eventually come up with a new excuse for all
Well,
of
Yep.
these sightings,
That's
right?
it's the new swamp gas.
It's new
Yeah.
swamp gas. It really is. It's new swamp gas.
Everywhere you get blimps,
Yeah, yeah,
air,
exactly.
weather balloons.
They have become drones. So they've evolved. You see, UFOs turned into UAPs, weather balloons turned into drones. See how
And the
this
drones
works?
turned into Paracas hot air balloons.
It's just
Yeah.
amazing how this works. What else we got, Joe?
Well, we have a 7,500-year-old toy tractor that was pulled out in Turkey.
Yeah, we do. Yeah, we
Okay,
do.
so this is really interesting because it came out on the same day that I actually watched one of the worst Marvel productions on the planet, The Eternals. And oddly enough, they're in Turkey, and Festos is making a tractor inside the Domo
Oh
in
yeah,
Turkey,
that's right. He
right
did,
around
didn't
7,500, 8,000 years ago.
he? That's right.
So it's kind of funny that it just so happened to come out right around the same time. And then here's this toy tractor.
That's kind of interesting. I wouldn't call the Eternals the worst though. For Ancient Astronaut folks, you will love this movie.
Yeah, you will. There's a lot of nods to that.
It's 100%.
Jack Kirby liked the theory.
He was ate up with it, wasn't he? I mean, really.
So this toy tractor. Now,
yeah.
let's just hypothetically speaking.
Okay, what was it made of?
Well, it was made out of like clay and
Stone, right?
stones. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's really interesting that this thing was found, for one, because nothing in the timeline existed at that point that looked like this, that we're aware of. That doesn't mean that it's not possible, because there could have been something. Was it driven by steam engine? I don't know, but it very well could have been something that was pulled by an ox and used as a mechanical plow.
Or we're looking at a Fred Flintstone situation,
I don't know.
Yeah.
If you look at the body of it, it clearly looks like there's a nuclear reactor there. No, I don't know.
It's got flux capacitor.
It possibly does. I don't know. I mean, we've heard these legends before that there were, amazing ancient technology. And honestly, guys, laugh at it all you will, but that could explain moving some very big rocks at some point in our past.
It really could. You're not wrong.
Yeah, and we don't know what happened. I mean, look, the Younger Dryas event. Who knows what it wiped out? So, there's all kinds of stuff like that. We have also one of the really crazy thing was we had the CIA guy come out. We'll link over to that. Who brought that story to us, Joe? Is that Brandon that brought that out?
Yeah, that's Brandon Wills again. That is one of
he
the
is
wild and weird field informants who is out there on the spot collecting articles and posting them up for us.
He really is. And if you see a news story that you think is worthy to throw on here, then by all means send it over to us. If we use it, we'll mention you on the air, and you maybe even make you a little fancy graphic or something. I don't know. But
and make
just
sure
give Aaron Kittle a shout out. He was the one that shared the nuclear technician account there. So thanks for sharing that with us, bud.
Make sure you join the Wild and Weird group on Facebook, because it is just a constant flow of these crazy articles and these crazy news stories. And there's a lot of good discussion that goes on there too as well. So if you are on Facebook, make sure you go over there and join that little group. It's a good little resource for everything weird out there.
it really is.
Also in the news, if you guys want to go check out Bigfoot Society's podcast, you can check out both Jesse and Ron on the latest 2 episodes over there with Jeremiah Byron. He is this close to having a wild and weird hat trick. The only thing he's got to do now is have all 3 of us on at the same time.
Well, that's going to happen with us having him on. So that'll
very
be
likely. That's how that's going to go.
Yeah, that's how that's going to go.
It'll be a joint episode. Because
Cool.
if you guys want to go check out my episode with him, it was last year. It was right after the Wineberry investigation. So you guys will enjoy that one. We talked a little bit about that. If you're familiar with the Wineberry, you can go listen to the Wineberry episode here at Wild and Weird Radio.
Yep. And I believe he actually linked to it as well in that story, because we talked about Wineberry as well. We talked about everything from ancient aliens to
they were both great episodes.
Out of body experiences. So you got to hear some of the behind the scenes stuff with me, which is kind of rare. And then it's just a great episode. So go check it out, and be sure to subscribe and follow him. this stuff really, it's work. And, whether you want to support it by just, giving a nice little like or dropping them some, to their Patreon or something, that's entirely up to you. But it really does make a difference.
Also, last little bit of news here for you guys. We have at the Wild and Weird shop been shut down for the last 2 weeks. Anybody who has made orders, I promise your orders are going out first thing Monday morning. So by the time you listen to this, you should actually already have your products. Yep. And thanks for helping support us, guys. We really appreciate it.
Absolutely. What else we got in the news? We had a big volcanic explosion.
Oh yeah. Oh,
was
I'm obsessed with this volcanic explosion.
Well, tell us about it.
So I don't know if we've gotten any information out. I've been kind of following it closely for the past few days or past couple of days that it's happened. But it was at it was off the coast of Tonga, and this is a every 1,000-year event with this volcano. They did testing on all the soil samples and everything like that, and there was an event almost as large as this 1,000 years ago, and it was right on schedule. And there were a couple of other minor explosions that were around the edge of the caldera, probably about 10, 15 years ago. I think there's one 20 years ago. And those were just events that were kind of building pressure on the system there. But this was a major, major event. This was a major explosion. And this came from the center of the caldera. And so it caused a tsunami effect, but because it was the island and that where the volcano is so remote, it didn't cause a ton of damage. And you would think that, the explosion of a volcano would cause a huge tsunami, but usually the bigger tsunamis are from earthquakes where the tectonic plates will shift and they kind of throw the water and the earth up, and then it throws it into a direction. With this, it was more of a dispersed 360-degree explosion, and so that's why the tsunamis were not as cataclysmic as people kind of thought they would be.
The energy kind of gets spread out rather than with a sudden upheaval.
Right. So right now, I think we're still trying to hear back from people there. There was a couple of events earlier in the day, or the day before. There was just small explosions. And so the geologists that are there on the island of Tonga got to witness that, which is, just a once in a lifetime, once in a millennia event for a geologist to actually see these events in person. But there's ham radio operators that can't seem to get through. So we don't know the extent of the damage on the island of Tonga just yet. By the time this comes out, hopefully we'll have more information about those people and what's going on there. I'm just concerned that this is just the beginning of several other seismic and volcanic events that are going on, because we have an uptick of earthquakes right now. The ring of fire is kind of awakening a little bit, and it's very, very concerning that we could be having these cataclysmic events going on through this year with everything going on. Now we have volcanoes exploding across the globe.
This has reminded me of some stuff Edgar Casey said once, but that's a future episode, I think, if we're here to talk about it.
Yeah, with any luck, we won't have any disruption with the Yellowstone caldera, because that'd be bad.
That would be very bad.
That'd be real bad.
It'd be extremely bad, unfortunate for Earth. No, that's an amazing story, though. It really was, just to see the video of it. And we're very familiar with Tonga. That's where a lot of our coral came from in the day.
It is
doing the reef stuff, and just to see how big that plume was, that explosion was in comparison to the island in the video.
Yeah,
that's an island, guys. That's if you're into the hobby, into coral hobby, that's where your coral came from. That's where your Tonga live rock came from, right there. And that explosion was massive. Yeah. So who knows what's going to happen with that? I would say that if you have Tonga rock, I would hold on to that for a little bit.
Price just went up.
Price just shot up.
The good thing too that occurs, like speaking from a reef perspective, is there's an abundance of nutrients that just got introduced into the water. So it is going to jumpstart a whole lot of growth. This isn't going to be utterly devastating to the corals. It might be, minor impact at the moment, but there will be recovery. There's going to be plenty of nutrients. Then also you get expansion with the island at this point as well.
Yeah.
So this is the natural growth cycles of volcanic islands.
I think some people were kind of concerned that when there's an explosion of a volcano, if there's a volcanic event, and then you have so much ash fall, and the ash cloud went so high, it went 3 times the height of the cruising speed or the cruising altitude of a plane. It went 3 times that height. A lot of people were concerned that this could lead to a cycle of cooling. But the good thing about this is it's southern hemisphere. It was not near a ton of land masses or anything like that. So that ash cloud is actually just going to hit those jet streams and everything. It's going to kind of dissipate. There might be a slight cooling effect, but it's not. The southern hemisphere is in summer right now, so there would be a southern hemisphere cooling effect. It's not going to make its way to the northern hemisphere. It's not really going to affect our climate in any kind of way. This was cataclysmic, but it was not earth shattering. This is not going to cause a huge cooling effect, as far as we know right now, because of the location of the volcano.
So what Jess is saying is no nuclear winter.
Nuclear winter. Not yet. Not yet. Although, when we had that winter where Mary Shelley wrote Frankenstein and everything like that,
Yeah.
we got a lot of really good stuff out of those volcanic winters.
That's very true.
That we did.
Well, guys, that's pretty much the news this week. It's hard to say what next week's going to be, but we'll be back here at the news desk and we'll talk about it then. So let's go on to our subject this week, guys.
Yeah, so we were sitting around talking, trying to figure out which topic to dive into next. And one of the things that popped into my head, I was like, let's go the hybrid route. I'm really interested in this topic. I know Jesse's interested in it. I know Ron's interested in it. So we can have a great conversation about it. So without further ado, Ron, give us a little rundown on the hybrid theory, if you will.
Hybrid theory? Well, the hybrid theory states that aliens, or something that we deem as aliens, has been actively involved in genetic manipulation of the human species for thousands and thousands of years. It has come out more, I guess, from a lot of the abductees who has reported that they have had these procedures, experiments and procedures that take place with them in the creation of basically half alien, half human beings. And it doesn't seem that it's really a new thing. That's what really gets into it. When you really get down into it, you start seeing these repeated throughout time. But I thought it was interesting that we go back to that Roper poll from 1997 that says, over 4 million Americans in the poll may have been abducted, and you start thinking about that kind of stuff. And it's like, well, if this is real, then how far does it really go back, and what are some of the implications of it, right?
Yeah. And, you'll hear conflicting theories. You will hear some folks who will look back throughout history and who can point out the point of hybridization and different stories and lore. And then you're also going to come across some of the more government conspiracies where, the hybridization really started after the government came in contact with these entities. And they basically gave them permission to test and manipulate human beings. So you got a little bit on both sides here. And we'll tackle both of them tonight, as well as some rather interesting theories involving Nephilim host mothers.
Yes.
Yeah, looks like we're going to go about anywhere and everywhere with this. But let's go back to what may be the very first experience of this, or report of this, I should say, because a lot of people think it's Betty and Barney Hill, right? That's what they think, but it really wasn't Betty and Barney Hill. It was Antonio Villalobos from where was he from? I can't even think of the name now, but yeah, him. New Zealand, right? Or something.
Yeah, Brazil. He was from New Zealand.
Brazil, yeah.
Yep.
That's it. Anyway, he claimed to have been abducted, and that was in 1957. So this is way before Betty and Barney. And some of the crazy things that happened with him was he was taken on board a ship after he saw it land in a field. There were some 5-foot tall humanoid type creatures that he met, drug him onto the ship, performed some experiments on him, and then put him in a room where this incredibly beautiful naked alien chick comes into the room. Okay. They have sex, and all of a sudden she like smiles and points at her stomach, rubbing it, and then at the sky, and gets up and walks away. Mr. Boas goes back to his farm, to his field. What's really funny about this, though, is when he does tell this story, of course, everyone laughs at him. But when it's investigated, he starts reporting that he has nausea and weakness, and he has these bad headaches. Well, after a while, they start doing some research on this dude and doing some tests and find out he's been exposed to high levels of radiation.
Yep.
Now, no one can really explain how this guy was exposed to radiation while out
Other
there.
than clapping alien cheeks.
Just saying, I don't know. But he definitely did suffer from what was basically exposure to radiation. He stuck to that story, by the way, guys, until the day he died. So it kind of doesn't, I don't know. You heard me before. I think they mess with our heads. So I don't know.
Any kind of encounter like this will have lingering, long-lasting, very prevalent effects on you. It's almost like a post-traumatic stress issue, but then you're talking also high exposures of radiation, which has its own litany of effects that will follow along with it throughout the rest of your life. So in what other way would he have been exposed to these high levels of radiation that would have caused him to have the headache, nausea, and the weakness, other than being abducted? It's not exactly like, Brazil is known for its nuclear reactors back in 1957.
Or its nuclear test, it's not,
Right.
This is not like Bikini Island tests or anything like that, know?
Yes.
Exactly.
Yeah,
So,
absolutely.
So like you had mentioned, Betty and Barney Hill, just a few years later, they began to, tell their story. And initially, when it first comes out, they don't mention the sexual aspects of it. Betty does mention having a needle driven into her belly button, but it wasn't nearly as pleasurable as Mr. Velaboa's.
Yeah.
Hers was more traumatic. But later in their story, it came out, oh gosh, what was it? 3 or 4 years after the actual abduction, when she started talking about being part, or she thought she was a part of a hybrid program.
It was a while after, because
Yeah.
this all started, her memories came back as dreams, remember? And then
They did,
after that, she got regressed, and that's how we found the rest of the story, the map and all that.
Yep.
So it was some time, like you said, yes.
So we see this starting to come out. Now, we're giving you right now more of the modern accounts, okay? Because we'll be able to dive back later and talk about some of the possibilities that tie into ancient alien theory, or ancient astronaut theory, rather.
Yeah.
So
I think it does. I mean, these are more modern, right? So this is the 60s. We had Betty Anderson was also in the 60s. If anyone's ever read any of those books, the Watcher series by Ray Fowler, incredible book.
They're great.
Her experiences had a lot of religious overtones, and a lot of researchers absolutely would not touch her stuff because they thought it just sounded too wild. And then eventually someone said, wait, this kind of sounds like this whole contactee thing kind of actually sounds like these abduction stories that we think are real. Yeah. So, it took them a while to figure out that they're really talking about the same thing. Just because these contactees were experiencing these things in different ways than some of these abductees were, they looked at it a little different, So by the 1980s, they were looking at these things a lot more differently.
They were treating them with a little bit more delicately.
They were.
And currently, if you watch I can't remember what it's called. It's Demi Lovato's new show.
Oh God.
Actually. Yeah. I was watching it about, I don't know, probably day 3 into my quarantine. But she has a UFO show that's on TV that's actually not a dumpster fire. She approaches the topic with respect, and because she herself has had some experiences. And one of the episodes, she goes and she speaks with a woman who has spoke about something that is really common among the folks who believe that they were part of a hybrid program. And one of the leading reasons behind why they believe they were in a hybrid program. And that is the fact that their abductions are reoccurrent. And they're not just reoccurrent in this way, but they're almost like visitations, almost like visitation rights. If you have children and you've gone through a divorce and you've got custodial rights, it's like they bring them by every now and then to introduce you to them and say, hey, here's your, they call them a star child. And they'll be introduced to their kid, and they'll, describe its features as having large eyes, kind of strange, but human-like hair in between their height and short. Now, if you imagine what would happen if you mashed up the cover of Communion with a human, it's kind of like, looks like that is what they describe. But this is one of those things where you can't just take these accounts and take these witnesses and abandon them, because that would be very emotionally taxing. Me as a parent here, like I can't imagine thinking that I had children out in a UFO somewhere that I never get to see. And the fact that they would get to see these children of theirs for a brief fleeting moment and then they're gone again. Like what kind of effect that would have on your psyche? How would that make you feel?
And we all know that the alien courts really mistreat humans.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. They don't have humans in mind when they're making their rules.
Well, I really don't know much about the I guess the parental rights of aliens, but what I do know is that we do see this stuff, and it is repeated. And one of the craziest parts, if we want to look for any kind of evidence that this may be real, was in 1992, Peter Curry from Australia. He was abducted, and just like Boas, encountered an incredible female. Actually, he had two females, so go him. But apparently, after this, they found a hair. They have the hair analyzed, and first of all, the biochemist who analyzed the hair says it's optically clear. This doesn't happen. This isn't something that you could find in humans, by the way. It's optically clear. He said it was almost like fiber optics. They also did a DNA analysis, and it revealed it was 1% ethnic Chinese lineage, and then another part of it showed that it was from a blue-eyed Celtic white-skinned lineage. No one can explain what that means, okay? How he described her though was basically that she was, big eyes, the whole works, just like Boas. It was the same thing pretty much. She even did the same thing. She even pointed at her belly and at the sky. I mean, what? Okay, I don't know, but there's some weird stuff that's going on, guys, and it cannot just be these people making up these crazy stories, in my opinion.
Now I'm gonna hurt some people's feelings here. The hair sample that was analyzed, the appearance of it, described almost exactly like possible Sasquatch hair.
You caught that too, right?
Yeah, Sasquatch, these samples that are unidentified alleged Sasquatch hairs are almost like fiber optic.
Yeah.
They have a hollow center. They can collect and refract light in various ways. And by the way, we're actually playing with that. So more on that later.
I thought you would find that interesting, that part.
Yeah, that is something that many a Bigfoot researcher is going to hear that and be like, nope. All the data on the table, folks.
There's the familiar. It's back.
Sorry. Hi, Thomas.
Hello, kitty.
And that's something I'm sure that we are definitely going to touch on in a little bit, is the possibility of Sasquatch being one of these hybrids.
Or something.
Well, I'm sure that you've got something interested in it, but I
do.
also know that Ron has another very good theory that he and I've spoke about on many a car ride, that he'll be able to share as well.
Oh, you want me to do that now?
Well, I mean, if we want to go way back, we'll start at the very beginning with, and we'll lead into it.
Yeah,
so
let's do that.
This whole new theory, it's not really new, is it? It's not
No.
new information. This isn't any kind of, just because there's more documentaries being made about it now doesn't make it new. It just means that there weren't camera crews running around in like 5 BC. So this all has taken place, and there's mentions of it throughout history. We have the book of Genesis, and we've got the books of Enoch that talk about Nephilim. We have these elongated skulls that are being exhumed from Paracas, Peru, that have DNA tracing being
and all around the world,
all the way back.
Remember, all around the world, not just Paracas,
Yeah.
Peru. They've been found down here. So yes,
They've been found all over.
Yes,
but the ones from Paracas, Peru, have DNA that have been traced all the way to the Black Sea. So, this isn't anything new. We're not seeing anything that is, in our opinion anyway, we're not seeing anything that is something that's this fresh new idea. It seems to be something that has been going on as long as we've been here.
So just to give a little background, the whole thing from Genesis 6 with the whole Nephilim is the whole passage basically refers to some sort of, it's the sons of God who lay with the daughters of men and produce children. And these are men of renown. These are heroes of the time or anything like that. And that's basically the whole concept. It is a something or a group of some things, whether they be outer dimensional, interdimensional, something like that, but is some sort of foreign thing that comes from another place, that is another species, and comes and breeds with human women. And whether you want to think these are angels, or they're presenting as angels or something, or they're interpreted as angels, or if they're aliens, which, angels and aliens have been confused for one another, or they are the same thing. We don't know, but they've been in the same kind of vein throughout history. But I just kind of wanted to give a little background on what the whole concept of the Nephilim is.
And to add into that as well, the sons of God, biblical scholars will tell you that the sons of God actually were not described as angels. The word that is used there is only used in that place. The word for angels is 2 or 3 other words, but they're never mentioned as the sons of God. So that's interesting.
It could be something just completely different, but so the whole thing is when the flood came, it was to wipe out these abominations, because it was to destroy them. And so there's this kind of this concept that, how did they, and that was what is referred to as the first incursion. So how do these hybrids and these Nephilim continue on after the flood? Well, so there's one theory that one of Noah's daughters maybe had the stain of, or the taint of, the Nephilim, and then she carried it on, and then it just re-emerged after the flood. Another thought is that there was a second incursion, that after that happened, that they returned. And we don't know if this is all in the same vein of these abductions and these all of these things, that these are just ongoing incursions that are occurring, and that it's all kind of the same thing.
It very well could be, or it could be survivors of this cataclysmic flood. We know that there are survivors around the globe of these massive cataclysmic resets, if you will. And there are survivors from all of those events. So who's to say one of these men of renown, being a man of renown, being a being of renown, which translates to having some kind of abilities beyond the scope of a normal person, wouldn't be able to do what a normal person did and escape and survive?
Well, these things were literally demigods.
Yeah.
Pretty much.
If you take
by definition,
into account, I mean, they had powers. Who knows what kind of powers they had? This might sound like science fiction, but this is recorded in multiple legends, and I've always said it. Legends stem from something.
Yep.
And it's always it's in all of these stories, when you read about the giants or the Nephilim or anything like that, any sort of hybridization or what would be considered an abomination or anything like that, it's never good. It's never painted in a positive light. It's always a thing that is sourced in evil and is corrupted.
Well, a good way to look at that is if we go into Greece and Greek mythology. We have this kind of idealistic view of Hercules, but the actual story of Heracles was a tragedy. It wasn't this good thing. The gifts that he had, the abilities that he had, were really honestly more of a curse than they were than anything, because his abilities caused him to allow his family to be murdered because he was just so arrogant and pompous. And he also, in these fits of rage, would just go slaughter villages. So, Hercules or Heracles was not this big hero by any stretch of the imagination. It was very much a tragedy.
So like the Hulk, what you're saying.
Yeah, a lot like the Hulk. It's things could be okay or things could go real, real bad.
Right.
Yeah. I get it. So, that could very well be, the duality of his, what he was made of, right? So that could have been the inner struggle in the battle between trying to balance out his human side versus his whatever side.
Whatever side.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and we see this happen. Zeus was very well known for not being able to keep it in his pants.
It's true.
So there were tons and tons of stories of these demigods, and none of them end well.
No.
What's interesting about Zeus is he always presented himself as something else. He was a shapeshifter, right?
He was. There was one time it was a swan.
Yeah,
like,
the swan.
It's
never in a million years have I ever been like, you know what? That swan
looks pretty good.
Is very attractive. I think I'm gonna let it get me.
No. So, what else do we have, guys, that shows this ancient?
So, throughout European folklore, so you can go back to the fairy folklore, and think about that maybe in this kind of way. And I know that there's a lot of connections there's a lot of the alien connection with European folklore. And so you would think about these things that have to do with reproduction and children and things like that. So you have like changelings. Could it be that they're switching out these children, and it's sort of a way to introduce this other type of being into the population, and then go from there and create hybridization? There's stories of women going missing, being abducted by fairies, and then when they're returned, they're pregnant. So that could also be sort of like an abduction thing and a hybridization program.
No, 100%. I mean, I think you're really describing the exact same things here.
Yeah.
I really do. I think we're just using different words, but we are describing the exact same things.
And these are common threads. And these threads they go from the beginning of time all the way up to today. And it's just different names for the same concepts and the same events and the same experiences that people have.
Native American lore is filled with it. You're gonna hear a story like Joe said of the star people, the sky people. There's so many different ones. We'll link to a few of the legends, and you can take a look at those for yourself, because there's just too many to even go into. You could have we could do a complete episode just on that. And we will revisit this topic in depth later. I am working on trying to get someone on who actually has had some of these experiences. That should be really good for you guys to listen to.
That would be fantastic.
I'm hoping it pulls through. And here's the big thing, though, guys, and this is the number one question probably on everyone else's mind out there as well. And why would this be going on? What do we know as into why this would be going on? Is there any kind of real evidence that something is going on? Well, we do know that recent research has shown that the data has shown that human DNA today does not match the data of the DNA from 5,000 years ago. Okay. So we have expanded or changed 100 times greater in the past 5,000 years than we have any other 5,000 year period. So that suggests that something has increased our genetics. Something's happened. Okay. I mean, I don't know how or what, but all of a sudden humans got really smart, didn't they? And Joe, you know, and I'm going to let you go with this one, but um, Homo sapiens literally probably should not have been the one to survive, right?
Well, based off of everything that we know, we were actually the weaker of the Homo genus.
Yep.
The Neanderthal was actually far more robust than Homo sapiens sapien. And there are so many reasons why we could go on to explain why they should have made it and we didn't, but something happened. However, there's a good percentage of Neanderthal DNA floating around out there right now in some of you. So, in a way, you kind of were a hybrid project yourself.
One way or the other, right?
One way or another. But we've gone through all of these different stages of development. And over the last, like you said, the last 5,000 years, we have just leaps and bounds. Like it is just skyrocket.
Yeah.
And it surpasses all points of data. Like everybody who researches this field and studies this looks into these data points and they're like, there is absolutely no reason why we went on the trajectory we went on. And some folks will jump in and say that it was because of intervention.
Yeah, I'm one of those.
Yeah. Right.
Well, I mean, if you look at it, you can't really explain to me why, because we didn't just, evolve a little bit. We shot past everything.
Yeah.
We shot past everything and we began to do things that these legends say that something did to us.
Mm-hmm.
So something is going on here. We're learning something from someone. I don't know who, but it does seem that something is going on. And a lot of these abductees have come back and they have said, like Joe said, they've met their offspring. They have seen the whole alien breeding program, so they call it. They've seen these tubes with fetuses in them, with these beings that are half us and half them. That's what they say anyway. Now, is that just some kind of a mind screen kind of thing? Why would they all be doing the same thing? If that's a mind screen, I don't buy it. I buy it if it's a mind screen, if it's just one or two people saying, hey, look, I saw this thing. But if you have millions of people, millions of abductees coming forward with the same exact story, and they don't know each other, and here they are saying the same thing.
These are also people who are not involved in science fiction. Like these are not people who read a lot of science fiction books, watch a lot of science fiction movies, anything like that. You have a lot of these people who report the same thing, these tubes, these development programs. They've seen these children, they've seen all this stuff. These are not people who are in that space and constantly thinking about this or a part of that world. These are people who have interest in other areas, and all of a sudden they have all of these just very, very descriptive just stories about everything. They're just down to the last detail. And it's not something that you would just produce out of nowhere if that was something that you're not like I understand if you read books about this all the time, you're dreaming about alien hybrids and things like that. But these are regular people who are not involved in this. And they're just coming out with so much detail in these stories.
Well, Jess, I mean, we've talked about it. It's happening throughout the past. I mean, we have to look back at the Middle Ages as well, the Dark Ages and whatnot, right? Incubus, succubus. It sounds like the same kind of thing, doesn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, it really sounds like the same kind of things. They blamed it, of course, then on demons because, we are dealing
what
with...
else would be a sex monster?
Exactly.
Back in the Middle Ages.
Exactly. What I think happened is our alien friends, they messed up. I think that they messed their time dilation up or something. They should do that now. If they do it now, people wouldn't care. People are into that freaky weird stuff, right? So back then, it wasn't the right time. People just weren't into that kind of stuff, and it was just frowned upon. But today, I mean, I don't think they'd have a problem. I mean, honestly, just ask humans, and they'll probably willingly go with you now. You don't have to perform some kind of weird mind screen images or anything. I mean, humans are weird.
Yeah, and there's tons of books out there that you can read that get off into some really crazy theories, but then there's some really good documentaries that you can go watch. One of them being from a series called Extraordinary, and this one's called The Seeding. I watched this one a couple years ago when it first released, and there is a portion that I'm 100% convinced is not CGI or doctored, because it's actually recording off of a phone. It cuts to the narrow screen of the phone where a guy is presenting and he's having somebody record him while he's doing his presentation at a MUFON conference. And then this girl comes up to him after the presentation, and you just get like real brief clips where she's in it, and she goes up to him and hugs him, and then doesn't say a word to him, just looks at him, kind of like deep, long-eyed look, and then grabs his hands, squeezes them, and turns around and walks away. And he believes this was one of his children that came back and got to meet him. Well, in this video, it is the freakiest thing in the world, but like her eyes are huge and they're not doctored. Like you actually see her blink, and it's not CG. There's no cosmetics that could do this to this degree without being like obvious. It was just weird, just really weird. So you guys got to go check that out. But
find us the link to that. We'll put that in as well.
Oh yeah, I will. We'll throw that in here.
Yeah. So what do you think? I mean, why would they do this if it's real, Joe?
Well, advancement. There's a lot of people who believe in the zoo theory that Earth is kind of like an ant farm and was a project, and there's this race of beings who kind of just mingle here and there and fiddle with certain things as an experiment to advance us in certain ways. I mean, there's a lot of weird stuff involved with that theory, but it's one of those theories. It's like sounds so good, but one of the things, I guess that I guess will make it work. Going at it from a biblical perspective. This is just my head knowledge and study from the last 20 years or so. We're always mentioned. Humans are always mentioned. In scriptures
remember,
being
Joe,
in the image of God.
Remember, Joe is a pastor, so make that.
Yeah. Yeah. So I was a minister for the majority of my life up to this point, and I've just kind of been inactive the last few years. But mankind has always been described as being made in the image of God. Now, a lot of people, when you start getting into this stuff, they, especially with ancient astronaut theory, they're saying that God is an alien. It's one of the things that they say is that God is kind of this intervening alien that, is God, basically. And if we're made in the same image, and that means that our genetics would be compatible. You're right. I mean, does that sound? That does sound to you guys?
Yeah, sounds logical.
So that would mean that we would be eligible for upgrade, so to speak, at any given point. And it was that an upgrade to take us from caveman to modern man, or was that an upgrade to just speed the plan along, if you would?
Yeah. I mean, I think that's a good way to look at it. We have all of these. We have tons of these stories, of these legends, of these things, right? So yeah. I don't think it's. I think we're to the point now to where we can't just ignore all this. Okay.
Of course not.
I don't think we need to do that anymore. And with more and more stuff coming out these days with UAPs and whatnot, I think this is the next step. This will be the phases. Remember, I told you before, there's phases to disclosure, right? we saw the end of the phase for the UAPs. That's accepted. Now the next thing is going to be who's driving those things. If they're not from us, where are they from? What are they? Remember what Ashid said, that we weren't. That what was it? The alien said we weren't ready to know what the true nature of the UAPs are, the UFOs are. Think about that. We don't really know what the true nature of these things are. And one of the really interesting things that did come out this week was that the video where, what was his name? The guy, Ramirez, right, from CIA.
Yeah.
When he talks about attending the meeting where they were talking about a hybrid program.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And he says in the meeting that he came out basically believing that humans, we are the hybrids. We are a product of something that has been going on for a very long time. And I think Luis Elizondo said 70,000 years in one of his things. It makes perfect sense when you look at it like that. They also said in that meeting, I believe he was talking about how top secret and how classified, not just UAPs, but the orbs at the time. They were specifically classifying the orbs as something very interesting, and they weren't allowed to really talk about those. So physical craft we can talk about, but not orbs. And we're starting to hear more and more reports, like you said, about that. And we even have local reports of that. Okay, I mean, something's going on here. I just don't know what it is or how it all relates. But energy, again, it just seems like we're all dealing with this whole energy, this technology kind of thing it's above us and beyond us, doesn't it? And I don't know, guys.
You had mentioned like who's driving these things.
Yeah.
I was recently watching Showtime's UFOs.
Oh yeah,
and
I saw that.
David Fravor, Commander David Fravor, one of the pilots of the Nimitz encounter video, he said that there's high definition video that is clear enough to where you can actually see occupants on board.
Yep.
And then he specifically calls them extraterrestrials because I guess he's seen these.
Yeah.
And so I found that really interesting. Just when you mentioned to talk about who's driving these things.
Ramirez is trying to get stuff declassified. Elizondo is still working behind the scenes to get stuff going. We're in that place. And some people are like, yeah, we're disclosure. And I'm thinking, maybe.
Not quite.
What? I don't know. Do we really want disclosure? There are those who believe that the human hybridization program, as we call it, does go back, tens of thousands of years, that they actively came here and started manipulating humans to create something. Some think their race was dying. Some think they were survivors, whatnot. The thing is, there seems to be two sides of these things. And I think that's the big issue that we have here. And we've talked about this before. Why is it happening now? Why are we knowing all this? Maybe there's someone coming back. We look back to the past to try to understand the future. And by looking back at the past, we look, I cannot help but go back to some of the ancient stories that I knew growing up, especially from the Bible. The Tower of Babel, why was it destroyed? Why were these places destroyed? Why were the Nephilim destroyed? Was it because that they had really put genetic material into modern humans? I don't think so. I think it was more that they were teaching the humans. I think it was more about technology. The technology is what doomed it all. And you see the same thing repeated in the Hopi legend. When the last world was destroyed, the third world was destroyed. Their flying shields were laying at the bottom of the ocean, meaning that all their technology was wiped out. This seems to be a recurring thing. Am I going to say that, aliens are coming back to destroy us because we found, something we shouldn't have? No, but could that be it? Yeah, sure.
Maybe.
It could be. I mean, we can't rule that out. It's on the table.
Could this also be kind of a give and take relationship between humans and these other entities? They provide us with this technology, and in exchange we possibly provide them with genetic diversity and adaptability that maybe they do not have. That humans are incredibly adaptable.
Yeah,
And
we're the cockroaches of the universe.
absolutely. And maybe there is something about us and our DNA or some people's DNA, because it seems like there's certain people that are affected by this and some that are not. Could this be a give and take relationship that here is this technology to advance your civilizations, here is this, but we are going to take our cut here. We're going to take our fee, which could be the DNA, the biogenetic diversity that they can
Sexy time with aliens.
Well,
exactly.
What you're saying,
I
Jess,
mean,
is
that's
yeah. Yeah, what you're saying,
So-
we've heard this from abductees before. They've asked the aliens, why are you doing this? What gives you the right? And they simply look at them and say, we have the right. That
it
explains.
is owed, I suppose,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It could be that.
And-
I mean, for all we know, there's multiple possibilities with this.
So before we wrap this up, Jess, there's
no.
one topic that I want to go into,
Uh-huh.
and it is a topic that you are very knowledgeable about. So I want to know, tell us about Nephilim host mothers.
So I'm not very knowledgeable about this. This has been a recent
You sit in
thing.
the car with Joe long enough, you've
Yes.
absorbed some.
Oh yes. All right. So I'm just gonna go through this whole concept right now, and you're just gonna follow with me along while I tell you about this. So there is a theory that there is a program where they have Nephilim host mothers, and it is the U.S. government and other world governments that are involved in this. So this is where it starts. So the story is that Nimrod was one of the antichrists. That there is a series of antichrists through the millennia, and Nimrod was an antichrist, and that he was one of the first progenitors of this Nephilim host mother program, where he was trying to breed these Nephilim to be an army or a force for his rise as the Antichrist. And that the Tower of Babel, it is a possibility that the Tower of Babel was like a pre-flood CERN. And that's a crazy concept. That's a pretty cool concept, but it's just an affront to God, and it's the hubris of man against God. So they began these hybridization experiments and everything like that, and then it was lost. Everything was lost to these cataclysmic events and everything like that. Fast forward, now we're gonna bring the Nazis into this.
Oh,
The
jeez.
Nazis, they pick it up. They pick up the
It's
program.
never a good hybridization theory story until we bring the Nazis in.
Gotta bring the Nazis.
It's got to have the Nazis for it. Sorry.
So we're bringing the Nazis in here. All right. So the program was picked up by the Nazis, and they did all kinds of genetic experiments. They did all kind of medical experiments. They were involved in a lot.
Yeah, they cut the head off a monkey and sewed it to a man.
Yes.
I mean,
there was lots of
jeez.
occult. There was like insane occult stuff. It's the Thule Society and
It's
everything like
documented.
that.
Yes.
Everything is documented. They were throwing everything at the wall for this. So we go from there. All right. So at the end of World War II, what happened? A lot of these Nazi scientists were picked up by the U.S. government for Operation Paperclip. They were brought over here, and they continued their work through Operation Paperclip to develop these programs. Now, could this be something for the U.S. military? Are they breeding these Nephilim creatures for this? I don't know. But the story now is that there is deep underground military bases all over where they have these women that they either breed these women or they kidnap women and they impregnate them with these hybrids. It's a whole genetic experiment. And one of the theories is that they're trying to build this Nephilim army for the rise of the coming Antichrist, whether the Antichrist be here now or the Antichrist is coming, and this is all just building up to this point. So there's women who have stories of being kidnapped and being in these underground bases and experimented on and being the Nephilim host mothers. How is that?
That's really interesting.
I think that's probably going to find its way into some movies very soon, probably.
Yeah.
It's got to be.
That's really good. There's probably it's probably like that last sandwich thing I talk about all the time, where there's just so much.
Yeah. It's got
There's truth in there, though. There's truth in there. And
This thing's been around literally. That like she said, there's documented
Yeah.
evidence of this stuff going all the way back into World War II,
Yeah.
where they were working on hybrids. Russian scientists were working on hybrids. The German scientists were working on hybrids.
It's true. They were doing anything they could to win the war. We know this.
Yeah.
We've heard the stories. And there was the whole theory that the Foo Fighters, that may have been a German superweapon, right? So you have all this stuff. And one of the interesting things that Ramirez had said in during his interview was that certain families, I believe he said, were followed, and more than others, that the government would actually track them and observe them, I guess, their bloodlines. So
Yeah.
I found that interesting. I found that very interesting. It's interesting because you hear a lot of things from these people.
Oh, yeah.
From people who've had contacts and people who have had experiences like this. And yes, I do know people who have claimed exactly what we were talking about. So do I believe them? Yeah, I do. And here's why. Because I really think that there's so much evidence at this point that we have to look at it. And we've said this before, everything on the table. We've said it multiple times during this episode. And boy, do we really mean it. Something's going on here. I don't think it's anything new. I'll touch back with something we talked about at the beginning briefly. I personally believe that we are the proof that something has manipulated, I guess, what we are today. I don't think that we are human. I think that humans, the original things that were here, are still out there. And I think you guys are chasing them around the woods, and those are Bigfoot. That's my belief.
This is what I talked to you guys about earlier when I said that Ron's got a really good theory that goes around Bigfoot. It's pretty interesting. Bigfoot was the original inhabitant of this planet and was tampered with to make us.
That's kind of what I look at it as. Like, whatever was here, it was manipulated. And look, here we are. And that explains exactly how we leapfrogged all these other species that they should have, by all right, we should not be here. By all right, by evolutionary right, we should not exist. Because,
well, even on the fossil record, like, we just happen.
We just happen. Yeah, we literally just poof, we're there.
If you go back and you study the anthropology, our brand of human literally just shows up one day, and then we become the dominant force on the planet.
Yeah. Who made us the dominant force? How do we do that?
I really like your theory, Ron, because also if you look at just the basic physicality of what we look like, okay? So you have, Sasquatch is a large, hairy hominid, correct? Well, look at us. We're mostly hairless.
I mean, I'm kind of hairy.
Well, yeah, we're mostly hairless, and we're smaller. And then go forward here, and you've got these extraterrestrials, as they're reported. They're short. They're completely hairless. They have, minimal features and everything like that. And it seems like we're this weird halfway point between what a Sasquatch would be and then what these, extraterrestrial visitors would be.
Yeah. Well, it could also explain why you're...
If you look at some of the anthropology studies on modern human, they've projected that in the next 200 to 250 years, our eyes are going to develop to be larger.
Yeah, and our heads are going to get larger.
The screen time that we have.
Yeah.
Yes.
And the heads are going to get larger.
No, you're 100% right. And we are not even taking into consideration that there could be some kind of cataclysmic event that even furthers that.
Yeah.
I mean, we may have to go we may have to go underground again. It's happened before. It's happened multiple times before. So, if that happens, then we're going to evolve even more. So you could even see bigger eyes, couldn't you? And that's, that's another one of those theories, those people who say that, well, we're dealing with time traveling aliens. I don't really think we are, because if we were, if I was a time traveling alien and I knew something was going to happen that was going to affect my species in the future, I would be changing it as best as I could. And I really don't see them doing that.
Unless it's
really.
like Doctor Who and it's a fixed point in time and they understand the time stream better than we do.
Well, that's true. We could be dealing with Time Lords, I guess. But I mean, who knows? I think everything, like you said, is on the table here. I mean, for all we know, we're dealing with a species that is so far in advanced, literally. It's kind of like with Star Trek. It's the Q continuum. They
Yeah.
were all intents and purpose. They were gods. You know, they could do anything they want, and that's kind of what you may be dealing with. You may be dealing with something here that's so far out of the ballpark that it's amazing that they even want to deal with us. So that's why when people say, the aliens are here to kill us and replace us, they didn't. They've already replaced us. I mean,
They've come here
that's
to clap some human cheeks, baby.
they've already replaced us at this point. I think that we are the direct result of whatever they did. And like I said, I really do believe that you could be seeing out there with with the Bigfoot thing, you may be seeing the same kind of thing. And what's really weird about that, maybe they continued their experiments on those, and maybe that's why you get some of these Bigfoot reports where they can do all these weird things. Did you ever think about that? That they were mixing their DNA with them as well?
There's such a difference between, you have the Sasquatch reports of the Pacific Northwest versus the Sasquatch reports of, say, the Appalachian Mountains. It seems like the Appalachian Bigfoot strain or whatever it seems like it's got a lot more supernatural
Yes.
entity, like abilities. You've got a lot more supernatural stuff going on. And it seems like with the Pacific Northwest, you have a lot less reports of all of this like mind speak and supernatural type stuff going on than over here. And so this could be two divergents of the same origin, but they've developed differently, or maybe one is more human, one is less human, and it's just different types and different levels of the DNA.
No, you make perfect sense. And a lot of people think, I've heard stories that they claim that the legend says that they saw these things dropping from UFOs, meaning Bigfoots, by the way, dropping from UFOs. I mean, so
yeah. I mean, if you, for example, the Momo account, it wasn't a solitary account. There were multiple witnesses that described seeing a UFO and these things coming down into the water.
Yes. And this is a common thing, right? So, and a lot of these are ignored just because of the weirdness and the craziness, but we can't ignore these things. This is important. I think this is very important. If we're ever going to find any answers to any of this stuff, we need to look at all of this, no matter how weird or uncomfortable it is. Okay. And if that means that we have to look at, aliens banging humans, we have to.
We'll take that for the team there.
Well, there is this fantastic documentary that, because I watched it, all of you have to as well, and it is called Love and Saucers.
What do you? Okay,
oh boy.
All right, we have to touch it because I know the Moth Boys are going to be touching this, and
it get touched.
Shout out to them.
That's right.
It
gets touched.
They're going to touch this a lot.
It's touched a lot
more in depth than we ever will. So you want the down and dirty, go listen to that. But what do you think? Like, what I think about that? I think that a lot of screen images are used and that this really does warp some people's minds, okay? I mean, these kind of contact encounters do have the potential to do that. And of course, there are people who do, what's the word I should use? They tend to exaggerate. They embellish and exaggerate things, right? Because it sells books and makes movies. But
it does. It does. And sells your art.
Why don't you go
because that's what this guy does. He made pornographic art of him and aliens and sold it and made a lot of money. At least some money.
Speaking of art, no pornographic art, by the way. But
thank God.
Yes. I have started hybridizing this. You'll see that on the thing here. If you want yourself hybridized, just let us know. I'm actually going to do this. I did this for a friend of mine, and she loved hers.
This is great.
And some people really loved it, and I thought, well, why not? I mean, they're like, how much? And I'm like, okay, we'll do that. That's cool. So if you want yourself hybridized, I'm going to call it alienated. Okay. So we'll have a new gimmick this year. We're going to alienate you, and we'll alienate you
in a good way.
In a good way. What you do with that image will be up to you. That's yours. But it will be literally you turned into an alien hybrid, and you'll get, like I said, you can see what that looks like. But yeah, why not? Why not? You know, God
Why
gave me
not?
some gifts. I'm going to use them. I'm going to alienate everybody one way or the other. So
Well,
what I want to do a conclusion though, for real, our conclusion on this. What do you guys think? You know, the whole real or not real kind of thing like we used to do. What do you think?
oh man. Okay, so I'll go first. It, this is a weird one because I do believe that something is happening. What is happening? I really don't know.
Take
The best we
aliens off
have
the
is
table. Take aliens off the table.
yeah, the
Call it
best we have
something
is what the
else.
witnesses say. The best we have is the witness testimony. That's really all we have to go off of. They've experienced some type of mental trauma that has caused them to suffer physically in some cases. They've experienced physical trauma, like high exposure to radiation. How do we explain those things away? We can't just say it's, you know, flares or swamp gas anymore. We've got to give this some kind of a serious look. So given history, given everything that we know about the humans and the expansion, I'm gonna slap it with a good plausible because I can't really dig in with both hands and be like, yeah, this 100% makes sense. But I can definitely go through it and pick through it and be like, yeah, this makes sense. This makes sense. This is kind of, I don't know, seems sort of improbable, but we got to put it on the table for now until we can get enough data to take it off the table. So plausible. That's where I'm at with it. You know, all the data's got to go on the table. We have to look at these reports and take them serious, and not denigrate them, not break them down to the point where these people become alienated in a bad way.
Right. I agree. Jess?
I agree with Joe. And, you know, I think right now, I think these conversations are really important because you can kind of put stuff together and kind of like piece things together. But I think at the same time, the reality of the situation is we have 10 puzzle pieces out of 1,000-piece puzzle.
Yeah, that's what we've got. Yeah, that is a fantastic.
It's just too much. It's too vast. It's too large. I don't even know if we could wrap our brains around it if we had more information. But I think these conversations are really important to kind of go through these theories and talk about it and maybe rationalize some of it. Is it possible? I mean, anything's possible. And we've seen that over the past couple of years that anything is possible. And I just think that right now where we're at, and it might not be in my lifetime or in 10 lifetimes from now, that we'll have all of the information about this. I think this has been a question for a very, very long time. And it's going to continue to be a question for a very, very long time, despite any kind of disclosure that we may receive. We're still not going to get anywhere close to those 1,000 pieces of this puzzle. But I just, it's fun to talk about and it's fun to think about, and it's good to expand your horizons on this kind of thing and kind of, you know, just think about that there is so much more than what we see before us and what we have before us. And, I mean, plausible, of course, but yeah, that's where I'm at on it.
Yeah. Well, I think that, just looking back at all the data, and there's mountains of data, by the way. I gave you guys just a small sample. You found a small sample yourself. But looking back at all the data, and it's, you know, 30 years of looking at some of this stuff. I can't say it's not happening anymore. There's something that's going on. I know when I first heard about the whole alien breeding program, I was like, come on, really? And then I kept looking at it a little deeper and deeper, and it's like, well, now look at this. So I think we're going to find out a little bit more about it. I don't think we'll ever know the absolute truth. I think we really have to look deeper, though. I think that the proof is there. I think the proof is actually in us. I think the DNA in us is what it really matters. So the only way that we would ever really be able to prove this, I think, is if we actually had one, and we compared our DNA, and if there's a match, or if there's enough of a match, boy, we really got to start asking some serious questions at that point, right? Because that would give us just enough proof to say, okay, if we're that and you're this, well, where did you come from? You see, this is a never ending thing. This is an infinity mirror, is what it is. Because as soon as we get the answer to one of these, it's just going to open up the next wave of questions. I don't think we're ever going to know. And I'm okay knowing that. But I do think that we definitely have to look at these things. Like you said, it's fun to speculate on, but we definitely need to look at these things because I really do believe it's going to affect us at some way in the future. I just don't know how. And by us, I mean the entire human race. I think that we're nearing an apex at this point to where something is getting ready to happen that makes us rethink our position in the universe, equivalent to the way that we figured when we figured out that the Earth revolves around the sun. I mean, I really think it's going to be that big. The major paradigm shift is coming. I don't know what that means. I just mean I think it's going to happen, and this plays into a part of it. So we have to start having these conversations. We can't just relegate this to the crazy bin. And we make fun of it every now and again, and so do they. I know people who've had this, and they make fun of it too, because sometimes you just got to laugh at this stuff, okay? Or if you didn't, you go crazy. So, to me, it's an absolute. It's not just plausible. I think we are the end results so far of an ongoing genetic experiment between humans and something. I did not say aliens. I do not know they're aliens. Something is what I'll say.
Well, folks, you've heard it from us. We're all kind of in the same sort of boat with it. But if you yourself have had some sort of abduction experience, if you feel that you've been part of an alien hybridization program, feel free to reach out to us at wildandweirdwv@gmail.com. We've actually worked with a couple of people who've had the very same experiences as you. We've helped them get in contact with folks who can actually help them rationalize some of this stuff and help them cope better with what they've dealt with. And so if you would like to have some sort of, not closure, but at least a helping hand, reach out to us at wildandweirdwv@gmail.com, or you can send us a report and summarize what exactly happened to you at wildandweirdwv.com. Just hit the contact us tab. It's going to send it straight to that same email.
There's actually a report your sightings tab now.
So it's the report your sightings tab.
Yep.
And you can click the report your sighting tab, and it's going to take you to that file, and you can fill it out. It's just a real quick questionnaire. But then it'll also put it back in our hands where we can get you in a position where you can get the help that you need. Because the folks that we've got in contact with, we trust them. They're good people. And the folks that we've been able to get in the hands of these people have actually received some help. So if that's the case and you want to go that route, you have that option. If you want to actually come on the show and join the conversation with us, you can just include that in your email. We'll get in touch. We'll set up dates. We'll have you on the show, and you can actually talk about your experience. Some people feel more freedom by sharing their experience with others. If that might be the case for you, feel free to join the show with us, and we can go over that one day. If you want to continue to help keep Wild and Weird free for eons to come, head on over to wildandweirdwv.com, hit that shop tab. It's going to bring up all kinds of stuff for you to buy. It's all made by us too. That's the best part.
All right, everybody. Make sure you like, share, subscribe to Wild and Weird West Virginia. We put these shows out every week. We love doing this for you guys. It's such a blast. I think these conversations are really, really important, and your feedback is really, really important. So make sure that you continue to support us by doing stuff that's completely free, which is, again, like, share, subscribe. Share it with other people that you think would really, really enjoy these conversations. And we really appreciate you guys being a part of this. We love you guys to death. And I think 2022 is off to a weird and crazy start, but it's going to be a great year. And thanks, guys. Thank you so much for everything.
And remember, if you guys don't go out and hit that easy button of that like to share and subscribe, then head over to Hellbent Holler and hit like, share, and subscribe, a poor baby Nessie is going to get hit by a freighter boat, and it will not get the medical assistance that it needs.
I'm just not even.
Your like, share, subscribe helps
I don't know
get that
why I do
injured
this.
baby Nessie the medical assistance that it needs.
No,
Stay
it
wild,
doesn't.
weird, everybody.
Yeah, do that.